Good afternoon, Shai.
Good afternoon, Sebastian.
All right, I sent you my questions ahead of time, so I know you've carefully prepared all these questions. And my first question to you is, give me 3 keywords or 3 numbers to describe who you are so that people who are watching this on all the crazy video platforms out there know a little bit about you.
3. So I didn't read anything because I don't do well with emails. But I will improvise. So 3 keywords or 3 numbers?
Yes.
Numbers. Okay, like 13, 23, and something like that.
In theory, they have to mean something to you.
Okay. So I would summarize my existence like relevant to this like audience, I guess. Is in like, I don't know, entertainment, let's say, okay, testing and Angular. That's like the 3 keywords that my whole life is currently around now.
All right, we're going to talk about testing and Angular in a second, but before we get there, there's one that stands out in your keywords, and that's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk more about this?
Yeah, wow, we don't have a lot of time for that because it started when I was born. Like, anyway, I always like knew that I want to do something with entertain. Like, I was the funny kid in the class and getting in trouble because of that. And after like when I grew up, I knew that I want to do something with that, but I also knew that I need money. so I started as a hobby, doing stand-up and doing improv, and started mixing it up in the way that I teach, and taking, because I always found programming stuff boring. When I tried to learn, I always fell asleep on the desk, trying to learn programming languages. I learned on my own and didn't go to college. So I decided that when I will know this stuff, I will teach it differently. And then I started like mixing in all my weird tendencies and nonsense humor. So that's the entertaining part.
If you found programming boring, what led you in the end to learn it on your own, and what led you to Angular? And
so I actually studied it in high school, but it was I did, like, once I finished high school, I didn't really want to touch it ever again. But it took me several years to understand that because I'm at my core, I'm a creator. I like to create new stuff. I like to think about new innovations and how to do things in a different way. This is my whole being, is a creator. So and also creating like sketches or like humor stuff, that's creations as well to me. So that's let me turn off the notification because I have distraction disorder. Anyway, attention disorder. So that's what's the question again? You see,
I was wondering what led you to finally go into programming when you found it boring in high school.
Yeah.
And now you're even an Angular Google developer expert. So I was curious about this path, this connection between you have no interest in programming because it's not made interesting to you.
Yeah.
To today, where you try to make it much more exciting to others. But what was the path for you to get to that point?
So I because I love creating stuff. When I was 23 or so, I decided I want to create a solutions for problems. So that led me to the startup way and trying to become an entrepreneur without even knowing what it is, and starting to study that. And I had like a partner who was much better than me technically, but then he left and I stay with another partner, and I was the most technical person in the team now. So I decided like, okay, for me, programming and software development or web development is a way to create. It's not like math and stuff like that. That's boring to me. I like to create stuff. I have a vision and I want to see it unfold. And that way, I started looking at programming as a tool, like an artist that has like the tools he paints with or, sculpt with. That's how I viewed programming. And I had several, downfall or something like that I thought to myself, well, I'm not really a programmer. What am I doing? Or something like that. But every time I had this like down period, I thought to myself, again, find the stuff that you're passionate about in the programming world. And because you have an inner passion, like for example, testing, I found that I really, really like something in my character, the creation, but also the rigidness or like OCD or something like that I need like a safety net feeling of like, okay, I can like move stuff around, stuff like that, and I won't be worried about stuff breaking. So that led me to find my own, like in the big world of programming, what I'm passionate most about. And I found web development and Angular. I started like back in 2012 because I looked for, it was after several years of experience with programming. So I moved back from Flash to JavaScript and I looked for a framework. So I started with Ember and Backbone and Ember and JavaScript MVC, like the first few frameworks, serious frameworks. But Angular really was the thing for me back then because it had testing in mind and stuff that no other framework had, like dependency injection, stuff that I was used to, and I really fell in love with the people that created it, and I got to know them over the years, and I stayed loyal to Angular.
What surprised you as you were using the Angular framework over time for the past 9 years? Anything that surprised you in the framework, or the way you learned the framework, or any challenges that you faced and that you managed to overcome?
About surprises, I'm not sure about surprises. I was always in a feeling that the team behind the framework had very ambitious goals, and I really like that because it's part of the startup mentality. Like you need to aim for better and bigger, and you need to go for it. And sometimes you don't succeed. And a complicated project like Angular, supporting so many applications around the world and so many companies, it becomes super, super hard to manage and to, innovate with all the criticism, with all the things. And the scope of Angular was something that also came from the same ambitious goal of trying to, solve all the, the angles or all the problems developers had in terms of JavaScript. So I really liked the path they chose to take, even if in hindsight they made mistakes and sometimes things took longer than expected. But I feel like with all that, learning it, like I learned it twice because I learned AngularJS and then the transition to Angular 2, and it felt like scary and don't know. But the actual learning of it and the fact that we had support, and I was I saw from the inside, because I was a Google developer, so I saw from this how much the Angular team cares about people like understanding or seeing or even trying to find out where people struggle with Angular. And at that area, I feel like only now they came into the more balanced way of trying to handle all the struggles from the community, because they're so focused on getting the, it's like a monster you need to tame, getting all the infrastructure correctly and the migrations and trying to improve stuff. And so the intention I saw that all the time, and from the DevRel team and from the developers themselves, and meeting them in conferences and talking to them on Slack. So I feel that they really cared about stuff, not all the time, because it's like not a big team. Okay, they couldn't like handle everything and solve everything. So in terms of that, I felt like I have someone to count on when I did the transition. Like I spent hours with back then it was Wormald, trying to understand modules, the new modules in Angular before it was Angular 2 before it got released, and then I could explain it to others. So I created a lecture about it. So my sitting down with him was for that lecture that I did in Poland, and so that was the I don't know if I answered your question, but that was my journey, my feeling along the way regarding that. I have a home with Angular, that I have the people care, and they care about doing the right thing, and I try to help as much as I could as well to the community, creating lectures and passing the knowledge that I learned, because again I am in a position. Because I back then I was doing more consulting, so I didn't have like the deadlines on my head, like trying to finish stuff on time and not have the time to go deep into stuff. So I had the chance to go deep into Angular and then pay it forward, like pass the knowledge to the community. So
that's what indeed I've always heard, that the Angular community was a very close-knit one, very supportive of one another. I've always had that impression. Let's talk about the projects, the open source projects that you have contributed to, and specifically in the context of the Google Dev Library. Two of your submissions were selected, were curated, and are part of the Dev Library. Do you want to talk a little bit about them, and assume the audience does not know anything about the framework that you've been using and what a spy is? So the two projects in your case are Observer Spy and Autospy. But what is a spy? And just give us some context and try to make it as simple as possible. Assume the audience and me does not understand anything about the specific testing environment and the framework that you're using.
Okay, cool. So I try to, a challenge to make it as short as possible. Okay, so I always start with the end goal. The end goal is, so I have this phrase, test right, sleep tight. Okay, that's my main focus. And what I teach, I call it test effective development, like cost effective, but test effective development. So how do you, when you write the test, your aim is to reduce the unexpected bugs that you have in your project, and also increase the efficiency of your tests. So you won't spend time fixing up tests and stuff like that, which usually people start from the first goal, try to reduce the bugs, and then they end up with the second problem, which is inefficient tests because they were taught wrong. So that's my main goal. And part of this goal is to assess the strategies that we use, the term that we use to talk about tests, like unit tests, integration tests, are they making sense? And also the tools themselves, like, are we using the right tools to be more test effective, to run faster, to get less frustrated, to learn faster? So that was my goal behind creating the tools, and I have like 7 more tools coming up the pipe. I just need more time and to hire more developers. So that's so when part of what I teach in my courses, I have courses about Angular testing and test effective Angular development, is how to write isolated tests. So meaning you have a class, let's say, and you want to isolate it, meaning all of its dependencies, you want to fake them. Okay, so when you fake them, you can, you replace them with something, and that something, it's called like in general term, a test double, like a stand double, right? It's not the real object, it's a fake object. And you can use something called the spy, where it actually records every call to that fake object and lets you interrogate the spy, ask him, ask it how many times and with which input you got called and stuff like that. So that way you can figure out if when you pass that spy along, your production code actually did the right thing. So that's a spy. And when I started developing back in AngularJS days, we needed to create the spies and everything manually. So you had like a service, let's say, or a class or something, and you actually needed to by hand write all the methods and create a spy for each one of those with using Jasmine or something like that. And I looked at it and I thought, well, that's kind of tedious and repetitive. So I then created a tool. I don't remember if it wasn't like Autospy, it's something Automux, or I don't know, something like that for AngularJS, and it just did that. It just like you gave it a utility function, and it created like a method. But then when we transitioned to Angular 2 and we had like TypeScript and we had like better tools, then I saw an opportunity to make it even a more no-brainer, where you can just give it a class and ask like, okay, bring him back a spy, like, without any helpers. You don't need to write like the string names of every method. And that way, when you refactor the original class, it actually refactor you don't need to do anything because it's automatically. So that solved a lot of problems. That was the core of, or the start of the idea of Autospies. That's why the name Autospies. And along the way, I saw more needs to test promises and to test observables specifically to Angular. So I added utility method that lets you do that in a much easier way. Like just like, okay, this spy, it knows how to analyze the return type. And if it's an observable, it gives you like utility method that lets you, emit an event or like an error or something like that, just to fake how this service would behave in the scenario you want to test it in. So that's Autospies. And Observer Spy came up when I had really, so currently if you look for observable testing that's specifically about observables and RxJS, you will find most like 90% of the time you'll find marble testing as a way to test observables. The marble testing, if you don't know what it is, it's kind of this cryptic language where you write strings like that represent your events with like how much delay between each event and if it was an error or if it completed, and that way you compare the strings, if you want to see if it like, and I live and breathe testing, and it took me a long time to understand it because most of the documentation around it was missing. So I needed to read the source code to understand how things work and why they didn't work for me or something like that. And that made it harder even to learn. And then I needed to also teach about it. And I was in my courses try to find the easiest way to teach something, like the no-brainer way, just here it is, like in a third grade level term. So that's when I thought about like, okay, how am I going to teach marble testing and how am I going to like implement everything in that? I was like, no, there must be a better way. Again, creation, again, innovation, trying to challenge the status quo and not like settle with what everybody else is doing.
Since you're talking about teaching, let me go into a different direction and ask you, well, what is the worst advice that you heard when it comes to programming? And since you're teaching others, you maybe have come across some of these worst pieces of advice. Is there one that stands out?
Okay, just to close, so that's how Observer Spy got born. Anyway, what's the worst advice about teaching? Most of the time is, so I have two problems with the way I learned programming, or sometimes see people teaching this way, and sometimes maybe I'm doing it myself and I need to correct it. Is assuming too much, and trying to be sophisticated, trying to talk in terms like, your everyday today terms, but you assume that, like you said, assume that we don't know what spies are. That's the mentality. So I always try to imagine that I teach a third grader about it, and then I start like thinking about what's the right metaphor to use, or what's the right thing to use. And I found it the easiest. People like it the most, and also that's the way I teach. I always look for the like the dummy version of how to learn complicated stuff. So that's one thing that I think people don't take enough into consideration. Like, dumb it down, people like it. Even like people who consider themselves smart, they like to learn in a dumb way, and in layers. Okay, so that's another thing. The way I see it, like especially with testing, you are bombarded with like lots of terms and lots of things, and at the same time, so people get discouraged and they don't, actually follow through, because there are so many things. So think about how to build it in baby steps, and what's the natural progression of the learning levels, like in karate, like karate.
Do you practice karate?
I practice MMA and jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
It's good that we do this on video at distance then, this recording.
Yeah, no, I would mess you up if you were near me. This is how I am, like I'm unexpected, like slapping people randomly. No, but the point here is that I used to. Now I'm a slob. Anyway, so that's that. So, but like you have like white belt, yellow belt, you have black belt. You want to start with the white belt and not jump and try to do the black belt stuff, because it's only discouraging. So,
let me ask you, what excites you going forward when it comes to Google technologies? It can be Angular, it could be other things. Is there something that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so because my main focus is teaching, testing, and actually in the field with clients testing Angular applications, I see a lot of improvement that can be done to the testing aspect of Angular. And what I'm excited about is that, first of all, the team is also like, they care about testing and they doing improvements at these areas. And also how can I contribute with my knowledge and experience to that as well. So I'm looking at how to make things faster, easier to understand, and with like open source, and with contributing to the core. And that's another thing that I liked about Angular is, like the support that you get when you want to actually fix stuff. I submitted a bunch of PRs in the past, although no big, features, and like small features here and there, or fixes and stuff like that. But I also got support from the team and from the community. So that's something I'm excited about, because again, what moves me is the innovation part, and trying to, move things forward. So, but I see Angular as becoming like, it got to a stable place now. I feel that now the point now is it's happy road from now on, like I'm saying it, because you reduce the fluff. Now you have the ability to reduce like stuff that are unclear or more complicated, and replace them with better stuff. And also to improve stuff, like I'm seeing constantly, like, the speed improvements and the productivity improvements. So that's what I'm excited about Angular specifically.
As you're riding into the sunset with a platform, a framework which is more stable, any final few words for developers, for programmers out there, that you would have for them?
Test your code. Like,
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right, thank you very much, Shai.
no problem. Thank you.